All right, so welcome. Thanks for your interest in the Connect Bay Area Transit measure. This is a really important measure. It's really important for the Bay Area that we've got a robust transit system, and there's some pretty big threats right now. So we'll talk about what those threats are and what we can do to help alleviate them. So let me start the presentation here. So we're going to be talking about the Connect Bay Area Transit Revenue Measure. I'm Jonathan Cole. I'm the Transit and Rail Lead for Climate Action California, which is a grassroots group focused on legislative action in California. The presentation should take about a half an hour, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, stick them in the chat, or you can ask them during the Q&A at the end of the session. So first, let's talk about some of the issues here. You've probably seen maps like this. There's some pretty serious contingency planning going on at agencies around the Bay Area. This is a map that BART put out. This is showing closures by mid-2027 that would be required if the Connect Bay Area measure doesn't pass. And that would include completely shutting down the blue line, which goes out to Dublin. The red line would only be operating during commuter hours and only in one direction. All those red X's are stations that will be closed, including the Oakland Airport connector. So you'd have whole lines eliminated. Basically, this takes BART back to what it was in the mid-1970s when they were just starting out with service. And we're looking at only 2 trains per hour instead of 3 trains per hour on basically 3 lines instead of 5. 30% increase in fares, probably 30% increase in parking fees. This is kind of phase 2 of their plan. Phase 3 would be a complete shutdown of the system. If they can't maintain the system at this level, we might be looking at a total system shutdown. So this is pretty serious. Other major agencies around the Bay Area are facing similarly dire circumstances. Muni in San Francisco, for example, they put out a report at the end of last month saying that without additional funding, they would need to cut up to 20 lines out of 70. They would have to reduce service on the remaining lines. They would end their service at 9 p.m. BART would be doing the same thing. So, anybody going out late at night, transit's going to be very scarce. And this would mean laying off about 2,100 workers. So serious cutbacks we're talking about. So why is this happening? It's happening because all of the major Bay Area transit agencies are facing serious budget shortfalls starting next year. Significant percentages of their operating budget. For Muni and BART, we're talking about shortfalls between $300 and $400 million a year. Caltrain and AC Transit in the vicinity of $50 to $70 million a year. This is a major crisis for transit in the Bay Area, and just these 4 agencies add up to about 80% of the riders in the region. And of course, the reason for this is the pandemic, the lingering effects of the COVID pandemic. So this is showing ridership for the 6 largest agencies in the Bay Area for 10 years, from 2015 to 2025. And between 2019 and 2020, we can see that huge drop off in ridership for all agencies. As the pandemic hit, we had shutdowns and the transition to work from home. And that transition to work from home has been a lasting transition. And what that means is that ridership is coming back up, but it's not coming back up nearly enough to fill these large budget gaps. And that's serious issues, especially for BART. That's a serious issue. BART was very proud that it got 70% of its funding from the fare box, from the fares paid by riders. That's a very high percentage. That's almost unheard of in transit systems around the country, to get 70% of your expenses from the fare box. Muni, for example, in the latest budget, it's about 14% of their transit expenses is paid for by transit fares. The rest comes from state, city, and some federal funding. and other sources of revenue like parking. So very few agencies have that kind of reliance on the fare box, but all of these agencies are facing serious trouble. And we can see this. Another way to look at it is to look at the recovery since 2019. So this is a chart for the same agencies, the same six agencies that we looked at before. This is looking at their ridership as a percentage of the ridership in 2019. And again, we see that huge drop off in 2020, slow recovery. And if we look at where we are now at the end of 2025, we've got basically a sort of a cluster with two outliers. Samtrans has actually done relatively well. They're back to about 97% of their pre-pandemic ridership. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they're not as commuter dependent. They're not hit as much by work from home. Samtrans, mostly bus service within the peninsula, not shuttling commuters back and forth from work as much as the other agencies. Then we've got a cluster of agencies that are all around 3/4 of their previous ridership, including Muni, Santa Clara VTA, AC Transit, Caltrain. Caltrain is a really interesting story. If you look at Caltrain is also a commuter line, like BART's system is commuter focused. Caltrain followed a pretty similar trajectory to BART until 2023, but then we see this big jump in ridership 2024, 25. This is because Caltrain opened its electrified line between San Francisco and San Jose late in 2024, September 2024, and since then has seen these really significant increases in ridership. And I think that shows that there is demand there if you can make the service frequent, fast, reliable. For folks who have ridden Caltrain, the difference between the old diesel trains and the new electric trains is huge. The electric trains are quieter, they're smoother, and they run faster, which means that you can basically schedule more trains per day because it takes less time for a run. So that Caltrain's increase in service and improvements have really brought riders back. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that we would really like to see. At the same time as the riders are coming back, we also see more drivers coming back. We're probably not going to go back to all companies having all employees in 5 days a week, but they are coming up to 3-4 days a week sometimes. And traffic in San Francisco has gotten bad again. This was an article at the end of last month in the Chronicle that showing that San Francisco is now among the most congested cities in the country. This is a table of congestion, and San Francisco's there at number 3, behind Los Angeles, but in front of New York, slightly in front of New York. And 50% here means that people spend about 50% more time in traffic than they would if the traffic was flowing freely. So congestion is really starting to kick in, and this could increase. BART did a study looking at travel times. What would happen if BART actually had to do this shutdown or the really reduced service plan that they talked about? They are saying that the commute from downtown San Francisco to El Cerrito, the time for that could increase by 3 hours. That means 3 hours more than it currently takes. Downtown to Walnut Creek, 2.5 hours more. Once the system hits congestion, it's just a little bit additional traffic can really lock things up. So we're talking about really significant increases in transit time, increase in congestion. And with that increasing traffic, we're also looking at increasing emissions, especially carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas emissions. We're Climate Action California. We're very concerned about greenhouse gas emissions. And this increase in traffic leads not just to congestion, but also increasing emissions. If we look at the total emissions in California, kind of the breakdown, this is showing greenhouse gas emissions by source. And the numbers are they're small, they're hard to read. The key thing is the purple here is transportation. And if we look at the transportation sector, that's about 38% of California's greenhouse gas emissions. That's by far the largest of any single sector in California. And out of that, about 28%, just under 28%, is light duty vehicles, meaning cars, pickups, SUVs. So those are the vehicles that people would be using to commute back and forth from work. Those are the vehicles that people would be getting into and back on the road if transit is basically cut back severely within San Francisco. So that's a really significant chunk. Vehicle electrification, of course, getting EVs, that reduces the emissions from vehicles, but that's not going to be enough for California to meet our climate goals. So there's a lot going on in this graph. This is looking at VMT, which is vehicle miles traveled. So, every time a car goes 1 mile, that's one vehicle mile traveled. And red here is California, blue is the US. The solid lines are the total amount. The dashed lines are the amount per capita, per person divided by population. And this is showing emissions relative to 2001. Relative to 2001 because that's the way CARB, the California Air Resources Board, has set their climate goals. And so if we look at this, we can see that all the graphs show that sharp drop in 2019, the drop in emissions post-pandemic, but then a recovery. And if we look at emissions for the US in blue, the solid line shows that emissions are now 15% higher than they were in 2001. California is only about 5% higher, so it's bounced back, but not as much. We'd like to think that's because California is very environmentally progressive, but probably a big chunk of that is the fact that California has a lot more work from home than other parts of the US do. Divided by per capita, California, basically two things make emissions grow. One is people driving more. The other is bigger population. So just population increases would tend to drive these numbers up. California has taken steps to reduce our emissions. So our emissions in 2023, which is the last year they have the data, were still about 10% lower than in 2001, whereas the US was just about back to 2001 levels. So 10% down per capita is nice, but that's really far from our goal. The horizontal dashed lines at the bottom, the CARB set a target of reducing vehicle miles traveled by 24% by 2030, and we're far away from that. Ultimately, by 2045, we'd like to get that down 29%. But the only way to decrease vehicle miles traveled without actually inhibiting mobility is through active transportation like bicycles and transit. Basically, we want to increase person miles traveled, or at least keep those the same. We want to keep mobility the same or improve it while reducing vehicle miles traveled. And for that, you need transit. So if we look at the statistics in terms of vehicle miles traveled or passenger miles traveled, there were about 314 million passenger trips served by, and these are just in the 5 counties of the Bay Area that have the 5 largest counties. 314 million passenger trips, 1.7 billion passenger miles. Those could translate into some number, definitely over 1 billion vehicle miles if those transit agencies weren't operating. So 1.7 billion passenger miles. It's actually kind of tricky to calculate exactly what that means in savings of CO2 emissions because there's a lot of factors that are a little hard to determine. But I worked through the calculations, and it's definitely in the hundreds of thousands of tons of CO2 emissions, probably between about 200,000 and 400,000 tons of CO2 emissions avoided by transit. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the group that oversees transportation in the Bay Area, is actually doing a study right now. And I've talked to them. They are probably going to come out with more solid numbers by late March. But certainly we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tons. This is a significant savings and as we try to drive down emissions in California. So that's the issue we're facing. We're facing severe financial crises for transit systems, possibly massive reductions in service, leading to increased congestion and increased emissions of greenhouse gases. So what do we do about this? The solution, or it's certainly not a perfect solution, it's not the complete solution, But the immediate solution for the problems is the Connect Bay Area measure. Basically, we need to provide more funding for transit. So this Connect Bay Area Transit Revenue Measure, this is a measure that covers the 5 largest counties in the Bay Area. It would establish a 0.5% sales tax in all of the counties except for San Francisco. Muni is in such dire straits, and San Francisco is a relatively small county in terms of its tax receipts. San Francisco would need a 1% increase. Even that's not enough to save Muni. There is also going to need to be a parcel tax, which is being pursued through a separate avenue. Mayor Lurie is looking at that. So 0.5% in all the counties except 1% in San Francisco, and that would last for 14 years. So this would basically stabilize the transit agencies, give them 14 years to plan, to readjust and adjust to this post-pandemic world where we are not focused as much on commuting into San Francisco in the morning and out of San Francisco in the afternoon, but people moving all over the Bay Area, all through the day, all days of the week. So this gives the agencies time to adjust to that new reality. The goals of this measure are to protect and improve service from the transit agencies, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in those improvements, to prevent these catastrophic service cuts that we're talking about, avoiding increase in traffic and emissions, and supporting the Bay Area economy. Transit is just so vital to the Bay Area's economy. It's just hard to imagine the consequences if we don't get additional funding. So when we talk about improvements, what we're not talking about is big capital projects. This isn't going to raise, this would raise, it's estimated, between $980 million and $1 billion a year. That's enough to plug those holes in the budgets. It's not enough. We're not talking about building new lines. We're not talking about getting fancy new cars. We're unfortunately not even talking about a lot of increases in the frequency of service. This is just to maintain the existing level of service, but we are looking at improvements in terms of safety on transit, cleanliness, and accessibility, better wayfinding. By wayfinding, we mean the signage that helps you get from from BART to your bus, or find the bus stop that you need, and stronger integration of transit systems in order to make it smoother transition. If you say take BART over to Oakland and you need to get on AC Transit, how do you make that transition? These kinds of improvements are already underway. This actually comes under the rubric of what's called regional network management. And the Metropolitan Transportation Commission has been working on this for a few years now. And you may be aware of Clipper 2, which rolled out late last year, which means that on most of the systems now, you can just pay with a credit card. You don't need a special Clipper card. You just tap your credit card and you can go. They have also basically reduced, it used to be if you get off BART and get on AC Transit would regard that as a new trip, you'd pay full fare. Now there's a discount. You don't pay the full fare every time you change systems, trying to make it act more like a single unified transit system serving the region. Better information, as I said, better wayfinding information, and improving services for folks with disabilities, basically trying to reduce those friction points where it's difficult to get around. So we're not talking about huge overhaul in the transit system. We're just talking about small improvements to make it feel more and more like a single transit system. So that's, again, $980 to $1 billion a year. Where would that money go? The formulas, there's a different formula for each county, and this was worked out. There was actually enabling legislation to set up this measure called SB 63, and there were negotiations between transit system operators, the counties, individuals, stakeholders, all kinds of people, and they worked out this system. One of the key features behind the system is what's called return to source, which means that the money raised in a particular county is going to go back to services in that county. So that if you're paying the sales taxes in Santa Clara, that money is going to go back to Santa Clara County. That was a really important feature for a lot of folks. So if we look at this blue, the dark blue is BART, and we can see that most of the systems, a big chunk of that money is going to BART because, as we said, BART has got a really serious revenue issue. So BART is a big chunk here. San Francisco's got a big chunk going towards Muni for San Mateo and Santa Clara County, also serving Caltrain. Alameda and Contra Costa, the green is AC Transit. So basically, within each county, the money collected there is going towards the agencies that serve that county. I should mention Santa Clara doesn't show any BART contribution. Santa Clara actually is funding BART within Santa Clara County. They actually operate that it's sort of separately funded and administered within Santa Clara County. And the San Jose extension of the BART line is being paid for by Santa Clara County. So even though there's no measure from this, no money from this sales tax measure going towards BART in Santa Clara County, they have a separate funding stream for BART. So all 5 counties really are putting money for BART. We've got the yellow, we talked about that accessibility wayfinding integration. That's for those projects to integrate the system. Some smaller operators like WestCat or County Connection or the San Francisco Bay Ferry, that's the purple in these. So there's money for smaller operators. And then there's this chunk called Flex. The Flex funding can go for any transit funding within the system. And several of the counties wanted that ability to move that money flexibly to wherever the transit needs were greatest. There is the flex money can also go to road repairs, but it can only go to road repairs on roads that are along a transit route. So the idea is that this money should be going to transit improvements in each county. So that's the basic breakdown of the transit measure. So how can you help with this transit measure? It's basically being put on the ballot through a citizens initiative. That means that a petition has to be circulated. It's being circulated now. This started in late January and well underway. The goal is to collect 200,000 signatures on these petitions by the beginning of June. The number of signatures that's required, absolute minimum, is 186,000, which represents 5% of the registered voters in the 5 counties. But obviously you want to have some room for error there. Not all those signatures are going to turn out to be valid. People make mistakes. So over 200,000, as many as we can get. 250 would be great, 280, but definitely we want to get at least 200,000 signatures. The reason for doing this as a citizens initiative is if it's a citizens initiative, it can be passed in November by a simple majority vote. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission could have put this on the ballot itself, but then it would require a 2/3 vote to pass. Most of the polls show this measure getting about 60% of the votes in the 5-county area, roughly. Those are early polls. You never know. Things can change. A lot can change between now and November, but it's looking like 60% at this point. So pretty comfortable for a simple majority, but not enough for a 2/3 majority. So this is why the Citizens Initiative is so important. So how can you support the Citizens Initiative? Of course, number one is sign the petition. Be sure to sign the petition, and we'll talk about ways to do that. Follow the measure, and there's a website for the measure, which we'll look at in just a minute, called connectbayarea.com. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, family members, coworkers, about how important this measure is, the benefits for mobility, supporting the economy, and protecting the environment, and encourage them to sign as well. If you've got time, and a few folks have indicated they're interested in doing this, volunteer to collect signatures. It's actually not that hard to do. It's if you've got a church group, there's some community organization you're with. If you've got a tight-knit neighborhood, there's a neighborhood block party. There's all kinds of events that will be good opportunities for collecting signatures. And I'll put my email up a few times here. be sure to contact me if you have questions about this. So let's talk a little bit about what you can find on this Connect Bay Area website. So I'm going to switch over to the web page now, and let me get myself. Okay, so the Connect Bay Area website has a lot of information about the measure. You can see the full text of the initiative in gory detail. It's 15 pages of legalese, so lots of fun reading. But it is something, if you want to dive into the details, this is where you can find it. There are a list of endorsements. So these are elected officials and endorsers. If you scroll down, you can see organizations that have endorsed, and that includes Climate Action California. These are mainly transit bike groups, and a lot of labor unions have signed on to this. So we have a lot of organizations that have organized this. The Trans-Bay Coalition is one of the big organizers behind the signature drive. So you see a lot from them if you get into signature gathering. And then events, and this is important. Gathering signatures, if you want to sign, you have to find somebody who's collecting signatures, and that's not always easy. If you do see somebody who's gathering signatures just randomly, sign. That's great. If you want to find signature gathering events, clicking on the events link here gives a list of events that are going on in the Bay Area. And a lot of signature gathering, a lot of this is happening at transit stations around the Bay Area. And, well, you can click. I'm actually kind of happy. I'm looking at the map here. This afternoon, there were no events listed in San Mateo County. So, things pop up. This changes from day to day and even hour to hour. And you can click on a particular county. Yep, no, it's in San Mateo County, but it's at Daly City BART, so it's just barely in San Mateo County, but at least it's there. So you can pick a particular county to see what events are going on. A lot of these are happening on weekends. So you find an event near you, drop by and just say, hi, I saw you're going to be doing a signature gathering event and wanted to sign, and they will be more than happy to take your signature. So it's helpful if you go to an event in the county where you're registered, just because the petition forms, all the signatures on the form have to be for the same county. So if you're in Santa Clara County, they'll definitely have signatures for your county. If you go up to San Francisco, they may not have a form where they can collect Santa Clara signatures. So that's the idea. If you're interested in helping with signature gathering, one of the things to look for on these on the events listing is where it talks about training and petition exchange. Training will basically, they can give you the training. It's very quick. It's fairly simple. Takes 10 minutes or so to train you to collect signatures. Petition exchange means you can take the petition forms that you've got filled out and give them to folks who will collect them and submit them to the appropriate county clerk. And you can get new forms back for more signatures. So if you're interested in signature gathering, look for training and petition exchange. And then finally, on the website, if you click on Get Involved, that'll take you to a form where you can sign in. And again, this is not just for signature gathering. This is for any kind of, if you want in any way to keep up with the measure. So you just enter your name, your email address, your zip code, and you can describe what you would like to do. And it can be just stay updated, can be help collect signatures, however you feel comfortable getting involved. So that's a basic look at the website. And let me talk just a little bit more about gathering signatures, and then we'll open it up for questions. So if you do want to be a signature gatherer, there are some rules. You have to be 18 years old. You don't have to be registered to vote. Interestingly, you certainly don't have to be registered in the county where you're gathering signatures. You just have to be 18 years old. A couple of things to be aware of. The petition form changes each month, and we'll talk about why that is in just a minute. So you want to be sure you're collecting on the petition form for the current month. All signatures on a form have to be from the same county. That's because they're all going to, each petition form has about space for 17 signatures. Each form is going to go to a particular county clerk. So they have to all be in the same county so that county clerk can verify the signatures. And it's also important to note that the address information that you collect is confidential. You can't use that for any other purpose. When you put together a mailing list, you're going to establish a crocheting club or something. If you want to get addresses for that, you need to collect that separately and tell folks that's a separate thing. You can't use the addresses on the forms for any other purpose. One other important thing when you're gathering signatures is you want to be sure not to give any misinformation, lie. You don't want to guess. If they ask a question and you don't know the answer, you say, I don't know. You can say, hey, if you give me your email, I can try to get back to you. It's better to lose a signature than to get a signature who then comes back and says, hey, I was given false information about this petition, because that can create trouble down the road. So this is what the actual petition form looks like. And if you're circulating these, at the top, there's a list of the top funders. This is a transparency thing in California. And basically, it lists the 3 top funders in any month. And part of the reason it changes every month is otherwise you could have somebody on a measure that you don't like coming in after this is published, giving a bunch of money to the signature gatherers and not getting listed on the form. To ensure that we've got a current list of top funders, that changes every month, which is why the forms change every month. And the print's a little small there, but at the very top, this one says valid only for January 2026. There's a new list for this month, for example. There's a blank that says all signers of this petition must be registered to vote in blank county. Once you start collecting signatures, you fill in the name for the county for that particular petition form. And all the people who sign there have to be from that county. If you have multiple counties that you're collecting signatures, you need multiple forms. You need one form for each county where you're collecting. And then at the bottom, there's a declaration form and that an affidavit. You actually fill out this affidavit after you've collected the signatures. It's after because you're actually verifying that you witnessed each person who signed that. So you can't just pass the petition around, circulate it around the block and have it come back. You have to actually see the individual sign the form and sign an affidavit that you saw them signing the form. You list the dates when you collected, the date and the city where you signed, and so forth. Once you've got the forms, then you can go to one of these petition exchange events and turn in your forms, or you can go to a petition hub, which we'll talk about in a minute. One other thing to notice on this form is in the lower right-hand corner, there's a packet number. You need to know that number. You need to know that number if you're turning in at a petition hub. So the best way to get trained and exchange petitions, the easiest, is to go to one of these events that's listed on the website. If you're not able to do that, you can basically do self-training. There is a form, and I'll put these in the chat, and these links in the chat. Also, it'll take about a day or two to get the recording ready. When you get the recording, you'll also get a link to a PDF with all the slides from this presentation, and those links in the slides should be clickable. So you can just go and click on those links on the slides as well. Basically, the top link is for a training form. It gives you all the information that you need, the stuff that I've been saying, plus a lot more. And it gives you some tips about how to collect signatures. Once you're trained, there's actually a link. If you click on the second link, that takes you to a form that you basically fill out and you say, okay, I have now completed the training. You check boxes to indicate, yes, I understand that I can't lie about the measure, that I have to, that all the signatures need to be in the same county and so forth. You check all those off, you give them the email. Now your email is registered. And that does two things. It means you get all the emails that are directed towards signature gatherers that gives you the information you need to collect signatures. And it also means that you're registered. So if you need to go to a petition hub, you can easily turn in your forms. And we'll talk about that in just a second. There's a special email that the Connect Bay Area Measure folks have set up, Connect Bay Area 26, where you can ask questions. You can also send questions to me. They're probably better informed about things, but if there's something that you want to ask, you're not sure about, don't hesitate to send me an email, and I'll be happy to find the answer for you. So what are these petition hubs? If you're not able to attend any events, most of them are on weekends, if the times aren't convenient for you, they are establishing right now, there's only 3. They're hoping to get more. These all, interestingly right now, are at bike shops right now, but they could be other places. They're basically storefronts where they have a collection center to collect petitions. So if you can't go to an event, you can pick up and drop off petitions at these locations. Right now, it's one in Berkeley, one in Oakland, one in San Francisco. Hopefully, there will be more of these popping up over the next couple of months as we continue collecting signatures. So I actually went today just to see what it was like. I went out. This is the one in San Francisco, Scenic Routes Bike Shop in San Francisco. Really friendly folks, very, very helpful. And you can see there's this little gray box. It's a little lock box they've got, and there's a slot to put in the petitions that have been completed. There's blank petitions that you can pick up, but you do need to record that you've put in and taken out petitions. So there's actually, let me scoot back again. There's a little form at this shop. Actually, the top of the petition forms were flopped over, so it was hard to see it, but it's right there. So there's a form that's got a QR code that you can scan with your phone. When you scan that, you get this very simple little interface. You click check in packets, you put in the email, and you do have to, like I say, fill out that form to be registered to collect signatures. Once you're registered, put in your email, you put in the numbers, those form numbers of the petitions you put in. There's a drop-down menu saying, okay, what county and how many signatures on each form. Then you're done. You can drop your packet in the box. When you check out packets, you can grab some blank packets, click the appropriate button again, and it gives you space to enter the form numbers of the packets you're taking. That way, they're constantly aware which packets are where, who has the packets, have they been turned in, how many signatures, and so forth. So it's a pretty good system, and it was really an easy process to do this today. So this is a really easy. If you want to collect signatures and you aren't able to go to the events, you can do your own self-training on the form, register, and go to these centers. And hopefully there'll be more of those popping up over the next few weeks. So that's a quick overview of the Connect Bay Area Measure and the process of collecting signatures. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. So let me go ahead and stop the share, and I will look at I'm going to be looking at the Q&A. Also, at the bottom of your screen, there's a React feature. If you click on that, you should be able to raise your hands and ask any questions you've got. And just looking at the questions, when there was a couple of questions about one question was are some of the problem for BART come from the decision not to serve the peninsula? Yeah, it was actually San Mateo's county not to get BART service. This is a long history. San Mateo basically decided not to be part of the original measure back in 1962 that set up the Bay Area District. And so they basically don't have anyone on the board. San Francisco, it was felt that it was so important to have a connection to the airport that eventually that connection was built through San Mateo. San Mateo did contribute money towards the construction of that, contributes a small amount towards maintenance, but that's mostly supported by the BART district. But there's always friction there. There's friction within San Mateo County that there are no San Mateo representatives on the BART board. But within this measure, the measure San Mateo's funding will include funding for BART. So if you're collecting in San Mateo County, you may get people asking about that. But it certainly, BART, it does serve San Mateo. It's just because of the way things were set up, both San Mateo and Santa Clara opted out of the BART district when it was first set up. And San Mateo is in this kind of funny place right now where BART goes through, but they're not on the board. Santa Clara is basically running it's almost like their own BART. They run all of the BART operations within Santa Clara, including the extension. So yeah, we have all these kind of funny little quirks. There was a question about how do you sign up at your Caltrain station? How do you find local people? Yeah, you can absolutely. Anybody can set up. And if let me go back for a second to see if I've got this right. Go back to the website and look at events here. And you can see there's an event actually tomorrow night, poster stand builds. So this is the kind of stuff that's going on. There's sort of a community forming around this that people are exchanging insights about what to do. So if you want to set up your own site and you want to have a little stand for posters, a temporary stand, it's easy to set up and take down. They talk about things like that. So you can definitely do that. You need to be on public property to collect. You can collect on private property, but if the owner asks you to move on, you should move on. And you obviously shouldn't be in people's way as they're moving in and out of the station. But you absolutely can do that. One of the nice things on the web form, and let me see if I can catch that real quick. There's a lot of different ways that they're trying to build community around this. And one for folks who are familiar with this, some folks use Slack at work. Slack is an app that basically connects people within an organization. And so if you look on the training document, there is one of the QR codes is join our Slack. That's actually, it's kind of fun. There's a lot of people introduce themselves as they join to form signature gathering. And that's a really good medium for people to say, hey, I would like to gather signatures at this location. Is anybody able to join me? So there's a lot of interaction on Slack. It's a really good way to keep up with what's going on and get help with collecting signatures. So it's definitely possible to do. And that Slack channel is one of the best ways to communicate with folks, including talking to some of the leaders of the signature gathering movement and get suggestions, hints, and help in setting up your own signature collection. Other questions? We've got about 10, 15 minutes left. You can raise your hand, or there's not that many of us. You can go ahead and just unmute and ask a question if you've got one.
This is Abe.
Hey.
You just surprised that you travel around the country and around the world. I was in Washington, D.C. in July, and all of these metros are doing so well. They're so efficient. And I guess the only way to explain why the Bay Area is having so much problem is that we love our cars, right? You would think that, using models of other cities in their success of having a metro system, they would do the same thing here. But I guess there isn't enough traffic, even though the Bay Area population is probably bigger than Washington, D.C. and some of the other areas where they've got metro systems that are efficient and probably are in the black. I mean, does that make sense?
I mean, I think that's a piece of it. There's certainly We are very car oriented. The Bay Area, it's a large population, but it's fairly spread out. It's a big region, and the density of population in San Francisco, you've got really high density. You've got decent density in, like, Berkeley, Oakland, San Jose downtowns. BART was built as a commuter system, not really as a subway system like, the DC Metro, or, Paris or someplace like that. And so it is designed so much for commuters that you've got, one is the problem that we love our cars. The other is work from home, as I was saying before, post
Right.
pandemic. We just don't have that commuter pattern. I ride BART all the time, and to me, it looks like it's almost back to normal. But what we're not getting, I don't ride at those peak hours, and what we're not getting is those huge crushes of people going into the city in the morning and going out at night. And it turns out that that was a big chunk of the ridership. That's why, even though BART might feel fairly busy throughout the day, the ridership's still only about half of what it was before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think and during the pandemic, the roadways opened up. A lot of people started driving again. So yeah, people love their cars. We're kind of spread out, and work from home has really hit us. So those are some of the big factors as to why BART is really hurting right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cindy.
So from your graph, so I'm in San Mateo County, and there's like Daly City is BART, but from the graph, it sounded like the tax would support other transit systems within our county.
Yes, there's a big chunk for Caltrain. Let me pull that one back up.
I'm just trying to figure out how to like sell it to somebody in San Mateo County if saying BART is probably not the way to do it in San Mateo County.
Yeah. There's a definite political issue around that.
But I just wanted to be
Let,
sure that that
yeah,
graph is saying that
yeah.
this
Let me pull that up. So San Mateo County, it's one way to say is, well, look, less than a third of it is going to BART. I mean, maybe it's a little more than a quarter is going to BART. There's a chunk, and again, I don't know how folks feel about Muni, but San Francisco Muni has some routes that go into San Mateo. But you've got a big chunk for Caltrain, and that you've got that large blue chunk, which is something like 35% is flex money. That's going back to San Mateo County for transit services in San Mateo County that are not BART or Caltrain or Muni.
Okay, so the way to sell this is, as far as asking for signatures, is is basically this graph.
I mean, it depends on how people, different people are going to react differently. But certainly, this graph shows this is not just a Save BART sales
Okay,
tax in
all
San
right,
Mateo County. The
yeah,
majority of this is going to other things that
yeah.
operate in San Mateo County heavily.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, Stuart, whoop, you're muted. Yeah, you're still muted, Stuart.
Yes,
There
sorry
we go.
about that. Yeah, I'd like to gather some folks together and get petitions for them and then kind of give them a goal to say sign 2 pages worth. Is that feasible to do within the structure? Like if I were able to find 4 people and have them self-train and pick up their um, petitions and then drop them off on their behalf, is that feasible or realistic?
Yeah, you can pick up and drop off petitions for other people. What you want to do ideally is know how many petitions each person's getting, and you would, when you fill out that little form on the phone app, you would
Yeah.
actually check out those forms to their email addresses. So they would get
Okay.
trained up, they would register. But once they've done that, if you pick up forms, it's just a little bit of extra effort on your part, but you would have to, as you check out the forms, check them out to the person who's going to be gathering the signatures. And when you return them under their email as well. So you just need to know what email they registered under when they completed the training.
Got it. Okay, that sounds good. It sounds feasible at least, because it seems like that would be a good way to organize folks.
Yeah.
And all right.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The important thing is it's got to be the same. All the forms on any particular petition have to be collected by the same person who has to observe each of the signatures and sign that affidavit.
In the same county, yeah,
Right, within the same county.
got it.
And if you've got, again, multiple counties, just get multiple forms. That's all fine. In terms of picking up and returning forms, you can definitely do that for other people, but you want to use their email to basically check out and check in the forms.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Sure. Elaine.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks for
Hi.
sharing all that information. So I'm in Santa Clara County, and last November we passed Measure A, which was a 5/8% sales tax to counter the pulling of funds, largely to go toward healthcare, basically. So that was a 5/8%, and then this is going to add another 0.5%. So I know it's not going to be palatable for a lot of people. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on talking points?
Yeah, I mean, this was Santa Clara. It was right up to the last minute in terms of when this measure was set up under SB 63. Alameda, San Francisco, and Contra Costa counties were definitely in basically the original BART counties. San Mateo and Santa Clara could opt in, and it was actually a pleasant surprise that San Mateo did decide, or Santa Clara and San Mateo. San Mateo was leaning that way for a while, but Santa Clara was kind of the last minute. They said, yeah, we're going to participate. I would talk about, the benefits. In Santa Clara, one of the big things is there's a significant amount of flex funding. So that can go for a lot of beneficial projects. And I would probably emphasize that, Santa Clara really insisted on local control, and that because of that, their formula includes a big chunk of flexible funding that's going to provide benefit for all sorts of transit services around town, as well as road repairs on fixed transit routes. So some people kind of like, oh, potholes. It's going to fix some potholes.
Yeah.
So those are possible arguments that you might use.
Right. And is there a one pager or point sheet that would have information like that for me to?
I have not seen one yet, but I will check that. It would be a good thing to have county specific one pagers.
Yeah, that would be
I'll
great.
see if the folks have been thinking about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, Carol.
Well, you may have said this already. The drop points, are they going straight to the county registrars?
No, there are volunteers with the Connect Bay Area group who periodically will go around, collect the petition forms from those drop points. They actually do a check to make sure the affidavit is correct. In fact, one of the things you can do if you're not sure, you can take a picture of your affidavit and send it to them, and before you turn in the forms, and they can come back and say, yeah, that looks good, or suggest a change. But they will be collecting those forms, and they will then be submitting to the county clerk after all the forms have been collected for that county.
Oh, thanks. And the final date?
The final date, what I've been hearing, I've heard different things, but it's early June. And what they've really been saying is we want to be done by the end of May. We don't want to, this is not something where you want to wait up till the last minute. So ideally, all the signature collection should be done by late May, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any last questions before we break? All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for attending. I will be sending you within the next couple of days an email, which will include a link to the recording from tonight and a PDF of the slides as well. So you should be getting both of those. So thanks again for taking time this evening, and we will hopefully get this thing passed, get it on the ballot, and then get it passed in November. Thanks so much.